guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cheryl and today I'm here to bring you my October wrap-up. I read 7 books in the month of October and they all ranged from bad to very good. So yeah, it was a very good reading month for me. I didn't expect to read this many books. However, this last week or so, the dreaded reading slump. It's here. I have no desire to pick up another book. I don't know if it's because I read so many good books in the month of October that I'm just kind of riding on that high still, or what. I've just not had any desire to pick up any books recently. So we'll see how November turns out. But yes, without further ado, let's get into the books. Now I'm going to organize these from my least favorite to my most favorite. So the first book I'm going to talk about today is Diary of a Haunting by M. Verano. Now, M. Verano, I think, is a pen name. Basically, M. Verano was a character in the book who is writing about the events of the book, and then this is the book published. But anyway, this book is basically about a young girl who, her family moves away after her, I think it was after her mother and father got a divorce. I'm not 100% sure. Her family moves to this small town. They move into this old house, and basically a bunch of weird stuff starts happening. There's like congregation of flies around the house. There's cold spots. She hears a weird buzzing in her brother's room. No one else seems to notice these things. Her brother starts acting really weird, and so basically symptoms of a haunting start. And so she basically works with this guy she meets and Verano, and they kind of deal with what happens. Now this book, up until the very end, was a solid 3-star read for me, maybe 3.5. But this ending was just atrocious. And I read a bunch of other comments on Goodreads about it, and a lot of people had the same issues I did, where it was just, it didn't make sense. The ending was very disjointed. So yeah, I give this book an overall a 2 out of 5 stars. The next book I'm going to talk about is Wrath of the Blood Eye by Joseph Delaney. Now this book is the 5th book in the Wardstone Chronicles series by Joseph Delaney, and it is one of my favorite series I have ever read. It's a series that follows Tom Ward, who's the local spook's apprentice, which is basically a man who makes everything that goes bump in the night disappear. They fight witches, they fight ghosts, etc. And so it's like perfect for fall, and this book was alright. There's not really much I can say about it because, as I said, it's the 5th book in the series and that'll just give everything away. But overall, I found this book to be very, very dull in comparison to the previous books. It was a book that set up the events of the next book. Basically, I could tell Joseph Delaney wanted his characters in a particular situation, in a particular spot, but didn't know how to get them there from the 4th book. So the whole point of the 5th book was just kind of setting up the next book, and as a result, it was very slow, very boring. Overall, I was just, it was alright, so I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Alright, so the next book I'm going to talk about is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. I finally picked up this book. I've owned it for quite a few months now, and I know there's like so much hype surrounding it, but this book is also like 800 pages long, and it's a mass market, which I'm not a huge fan of, but that's whatever. But yeah, it's a really long book, so I finally picked it up, and I understand what all the hype is about. It was well written, the characters were interesting, the setting and plot was definitely interesting. So basically, this book follows a young woman in 1945 who is going on like a second honeymoon with her husband. They're married, they've been apart for I think around 6 years because of the war, and they finally reunited and decided to kind of rekindle the relationship by going on a second honeymoon to Scotland. And while there, she touches a rock which transports her back to 1743 in the middle of basically a war between the Brits and the Scots, and so the book just chronicles what happens from there. And it's good. I like the characters that are introduced, but I had some issues with this book that kept it from being a full 5 stars. I only gave this one a 4 out of 5, and these issues are big enough that I'm not 100% sure I'm going to continue this series. Specifically around the use of rape and sexual assault as a plot device. I also didn't understand the main character's motivations half the time. But yeah, so if you want, I can do a full review on it and kind of get into my thoughts about what I didn't quite like about it and what I did like about it. But yes, I finally picked this up and it was alright. Alright, so the next book I read this month that I'm going to talk about is We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. And this book was interesting. The prose and the way the author wrote was just phenomenal. It drew me into the story, and the story itself is interesting. It follows this teenage boy who basically, his life's gone to shit. His family life is kind of falling apart. His brother's a jackass. His boyfriend just recently killed himself. And on top of that all, he's being routinely abducted by aliens. Now, the aliens tell him that the world will end in a certain amount of days, and all he has to do to stop it is to press this button. However, he doesn't know if the world is worth saving. And so overall, I felt this book was really good. I loved the writing, like I said. I like the characters. The story is interesting. I've never read a book quite like it. But like Diary of a Haunting, the ending frustrated me. And I don't really want to talk about the ending because I don't want to spoil anything. But I didn't quite understand the ending, and maybe that's just because I'm a very logical person and it was kind of open to interpretation as opposed to laid out, this is how it ended. And so when that happens, I'm always a little bit like, what? And so that knocked it down a star for me personally. However, I do highly recommend this book. I think if the premise sounds interesting, that you'll enjoy it. As I said, I found it to be highly enjoyable, and yes, I'm very glad I picked it up. I give that one a 4 out of 5 stars. Alright, so the last 4-star book I read was actually closer to like a 4.5 star, and that is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I finally jumped on this train. I figured October was the perfect month for it, because from everything I had heard about the series, it was pretty spooky, and this book delivered. It took me a little bit to get into it. There was so many characters that were introduced at first that I was kind of like, what? Okay. I had a hard time wrapping my head around all of it and trying to picture it all and trying to picture the setting. But eventually, about 50 pages or so into it, I kind of got in the rhythm of things, and I really enjoy the story. I don't really read paranormal, which is what I would classify that as. There's a lot of interesting aspects to it that I've never read about before. So I don't know if they're tropey because, once again, I don't read paranormal, so I don't really have anything to compare it to. However, I loved this book. I will go ahead and be continuing the series. The only reason that I didn't give it a full 5 stars is because, like I said, I don't really read paranormal, and so it took me a little bit to get into it because I can very easily picture and grasp a fantasy world, but apparently with paranormal I can't, and so that's the only reason it didn't get a full 5 stars, because I didn't quite understand what was going on half the time. But don't let that deter you. If you haven't picked up this book, which I think I might have been the last person in the world to not pick up this book, but if for some reason you haven't either, I highly recommend it. The hype is real, and I've heard that the series just gets better and better with each book, so I am definitely looking forward to that. Alright, let's get into the 2 5-star books I read this month. And the first 5-star book I read this month was actually a graphic novel, and that is At the Mountains of Madness, which is a story originally by H.P. Lovecraft, but it is illustrated by Colbard. It doesn't give me the full name. I.N.J. Colbard. I'm not 100% sure who that is. I've never heard of the name before, but I really did enjoy this. I like the art style. It's very different than what I've read before, and I'm a huge fan of Lovecraft. It was nice to see one of his most famous works adapted into a graphic novel, especially because if you've ever read any Lovecraft before, you know his prose is very long-winded, very descriptive, very frustrating to read at times, so this made it a lot easier to digest what was happening in the story. I'm going to look to see if there are any other adaptations of his stories, especially because the one I really remember reading when I was younger is The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, and that story just confused the hell out of me when I was younger, so I'm hoping that maybe if there's a graphic novelization of it, that I will be able to understand what actually happened in the story. But yeah, back to this. Overall, I love Lovecraft, so I had to give this book a 5 out of 5 stars. It was well done. The story is crazy. But yeah, if you haven't picked up this or any Lovecraft before and you like kind of creepy settings and creepy weird monsters, because he is the father of modern horror, so I would highly recommend picking him up. Alright, and the last 5-star book I read this month was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, because I think fall and winter are the perfect time to read Harry Potter. And so I've just been slowly but surely making my way through the series, and I was kind of like, I'm not sure what to read next. I was feeling a reading slump coming on earlier this month, and I said no. So I just decided to pick this up because, once again, Harry Potter is just the best. It will pull me out of a reading slump anytime. The only reason I haven't picked up the next book is because I'm trying to pace myself with them. But yeah, there's not really much I need to say about this book or this series. Everyone knows what it's about. And if you haven't picked up the series, I do highly recommend it. The books are so much better than the movies. They're just phenomenal. They're very descriptive, and yeah, definitely got a full 5 stars out of me. There's not much more to say about it. Alright, so those are all the books I read in the month of October. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these books and if you loved them or hated them. I like to read you guys' comments about this kind of stuff. So yeah, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!